Get 5 coffins ready.
Hey everyone, welcome to my guide for Charybdis. Charybdis is a super safe jack-of-all-trades style hunter. Her basic attacks are rock solid and her ability damage is solid too, but where she excels is in her insanely strong escapes and CC. First though, let's touch on builds. Like Charybdis herself, these are extremely versatile. Attack speed, crit, power, whatever's meta, Cherry can build it no problem. And of course, there's wiggle room for some personal preference too. Relics wise, well, she's a hunter, so Beads Aegis is almost always the way to go. Nowadays, some players opt for Beads and Shell, and honestly it works well, when you know what you're doing. If you're new to the character, Beads Aegis is the safe bet. But let's hop into one of the most unique parts of Charybdis, her basic attacks. Charybdis basic attacks twice normally, then fires out 3 rapid basic attacks which all act as their own basic attacks, meaning they have their own individual crit chance and will stack as well as proc item effects. To counteract this, Charybdis has all of her damage dealt by basic attack items reduced by 30%, so things like Kin Size and Odysseus Bow will deal reduced damage. However, items like Executioner, Death's Toll, and Iqval will all still proc like normal, resulting in extreme effectiveness on Charybdis. This whole item damage reduction isn't the main thing you need to worry about when it comes to these basics though, as mastering hitting those final 3 basic attacks is key to effectiveness as Charybdis. They react in a similar way to your regular basic attacks, but since they come out so fast, they're extremely sensitive to movement, and as I'm sure you guessed, their increased speed makes them more difficult to connect all 3 on a moving target. But connect all 3 you must, as Charybdis is balanced in part with all 3 hitting, so get used to it as best you can before hopping into a real match. That's not Charybdis' passive though. Charybdis' passive meter is filled for a flat amount for every basic attack hit, leading directly back to that basic attack chain from before. As Charybdis gains passive meter, she also gains attack speed. The passive meter, however, can be used to also enhance Charybdis' abilities, which we'll get to when we get to each ability. Realistically, you don't play around this passive much. It encourages you to take the initiative on most waves since you're going to want to be at max passive before every fight, so that you're able to balance yourself between additional attack speed and enhancements on your abilities. Unfortunately for my signature transitions, Charybdis' first ability is not affected by her passive, but it certainly does help her build it. Charybdis enters an empowered state, her basic attacks no longer having the unique final 3 hits, and dealing bonus damage to any god hit. She is now also able to fire these basic attacks through minions, but still stop on walls and gods. When they do stop on a wall or a god though, the basic attacks split out, creating massive area damage around your intended target. Firstly though, let's talk about hitting minion waves with this. As I'm sure you saw, generating passive with your normal basic attacks takes a while, but since these basic attacks now pass through minions, and each hit of the basic attack still counts towards Charybdis' passive, she can easily get full passive off of just one wave. And even in late game situations, it's something you're going to want to do as an easy way to get your passive up. Other than building passive, what's it good for? Well, despite the strength of her 3 basic attacks after her regular 2, I typically find myself utilizing this ability as a sort of stim even in the late game. I think it's a bit of a crutch for me personally, since it means I don't have to aim those basic attacks at the end of her chain, but it definitely gets me by. Optimal use of this ability in fights tends to lean towards using it out of range for more easily connecting basic attacks. Then once you've inched your way in a bit, you can begin using your normal basic attacks by cancelling this ability. This works even better when teamed with her second ability. Charybdis charges up an AoE attack. The longer she charges, the more passive will be consumed, and Charybdis can hold on to the max charge for as long as she likes, and can also cancel this ability at any time. When this ability is activated, it fires an AoE in front of her, this AoE widening when more passive meter is consumed, and applies a slow and a massive protections debuff upon connecting. So this is a nasty ability, but there's a few things you should know about it. Let's start with the casting. To get this ability out quickly mid-combo, you can actually just hold down the basic attack button while casting, and it will come out as soon as possible. This of course gives you the minimum slow and protections debuff, but sometimes that's all you need to get going. Typically, however, you want to let this ability charge a bit, mostly as a pressure tool to get into your lane opponent's head a bit, as well as just straight up using it for its devastating damage and slow. For me, I found that when my support and I are on equal footing, I tend to use the instant version, and then when my support has heavier lockdown, I let them do their combo, then follow up with a max charge 2, since if they use their CC properly, a full charge 2 is more likely to hit. And of course when I'm by myself, using the instant 2 mid combo is almost always the only option there is, since Charybdis is wide open to attacks and CC alike when trying to get that max charge. But what if someone tries to use a max charge 2 on you? That's where Charybdis' third ability comes in. Charybdis dives into the abyss, gaining movement speed and becoming completely untargetable and immune to new forms of damage. While in this form, Charybdis does light damage over time to all enemies within the AoE. Charybdis can reactivate this ability to consume a flat 30% of her passive meter, dealing additional damage and knocking up when the ability ends or is cancelled early. So an insane ability, there is no other word. There are other immunities in SMITE, but this is easily the fastest with the fewest strings attached. It's a great getaway tool, and it should be used as such most of the time. Just be sure not to pop it too early, and you're fine. But clearly, it does do damage and has a knockup, so you can absolutely use it aggressively too. It's something you do need very good situational awareness for though. You cannot use it aggressively when outnumbered, and even so, playing your hand too early with this when going for a 2v2 in the duo lane can easily leave you exposed, so you have to aim for using it more around the middle of the fight in that situation. Then of course, you can use it just fine in 1v1, and as I'm sure you can tell, this works wonders for Charybdis for follow-up with her second ability, ability, and is closer so she can more easily hit her unique basic attack chain. Again, you need good situational awareness and matchup knowledge to use it aggressively, and really, most of the time you don't need to use it this way. So when you're just starting out with Charybdis, try to stick with using it for escapes, and get more aggressive with it once you're more comfortable with the character. She can, however, be aggressive right out of the gate with her ultimate. Charybdis becomes CC immune and gains movement speed. She can, at any time, either cancel out of this ultimate or reactivate it. When the ability is reactivated by pressing the basic attack button, Charybdis fires her mouth? Ew. Pushing all enemies in the line AoE back and into the cone AoE. Then all enemies within the cone AoE are heavily damaged and stunned. And if this ability kills an enemy god, the ability's duration is reset. A crazy strong ability. Sometimes. If you've ever used this ability for yourself, you know how strange and limiting the actual reactivation of the ability is. It has an oddly long cast time, which isn't extended nor reduced by how far you make the ability push, which, speaking of whom, comes with its own share of weird traits. If you're ever aiming near a wall and intend to push your enemies into a wall, you'll need to be careful not to place the cone inside of the wall, as it won't let the ability fire that way. Using this ability is a tough combination between getting the timing down of when you'll be stationary, as well as leading your cone and line attack, as well as making sure you don't shoot the line straight past them and place the cone too far. It's a weird feeling ability that you need to practice a bit to get down, but that's how you use it. How about when? Well, as I mentioned, it's an awesome escape. So when your 3 is down and you're getting jumped on, boom, ult and you're away. As for reactivating this ability to stun those who are chasing you, it's a good idea in theory, but again, being stationary while casting kinda defeats the purpose of using it as an escape. Of course, if your team ends up turning the fight hugely for you, sure, turn around and try to contribute, but particularly if you use this to try and escape. When using it aggressively, going back to the difficulty of the strange mechanics of the ultimate can make it difficult. It's a slow and predictable ability since, wherever Charybdis is facing, that's where the line will ultimately come out. All that's a mystery on the receiving end of it is where the cone will be placed, which matters little when all the opponent has to do is save their movement abilities for when you stop moving to reactivate, then swoop in while you recover. But still, most of, if not all, this ho-hum about the ability is nipped in the bud by her 3, which kinda just saves her from everything. So learn the timing of the ultimate well, and stick back a little so that you can use it as follow-up to your team's CC, as trying to use it raw will almost always end up in a wasted ultimate, or at worst, costing you your life. Here's a few examples of combos with Charybdis. For ability leveling, Charybdis is a bit up in the air, but her first few levels are as follows. You want your 1 at level 1, your 3 at level 2, and your 2 at level 3. From there, what I've seen, it's mostly just personal preference. Generally, people prioritize either the 1 or the 2, then the 3 after that. And I've seen a pro player, PandaCat, skip leveling the ult entirely until later into the match, but that seems a bit unnecessary to me. But if he's doing it, there's certainly some credence to it if you want to try that out too. Charybdis is extremely simple for those who are already familiar with Smite's basic mechanics and macro play, but if you're new to Smite, Charybdis may come off as off-putting since her combination of abilities isn't what's often seen in the Hunter class. But once you get her down, she's one of the safest and easiest hunters in the game, and having a solid laning phase and strong late game makes her an easy choice for a main hunter. As she doesn't have a single matchup in the entire game, that's too bad. Really, the only things you're going to struggle with on Charybdis is mistime the use of your 3, the weird basic attacks, and the weird wind-up time on her ult. That's really it. To play Charybdis, all you need is a basic understanding of how her abilities work, aim a couple basic attacks, and the character practically plays herself. So get comfortable with Charybdis, and she's a rare case of a hunter who almost never struggles, no matter what the situation. That's all I have on Charybdis for now. Thanks for watching. And is closer too, so she can more easily hit her unique basic attack at the back.